want to start this review out with a story. So a few months ago, I reviewed the 2 Coil audio preamps. If you haven't checked out those 2 videos, go check them out. They're a few months old. When I was reviewing the preamps, I figured out really quickly that a seemingly very simple looking preamp was extremely versatile, and you could get a ton of sounds out of it because all the knobs kind of interact with each other, especially the output stage, which I'm not used to. Most preamps have a cleaner output stage. The coils, the input and the output are kind of like playing around with a guitar amp. You can actually turn down the master section and drive the input section more and get different sounds. Coil preamps are exactly the same. So in the middle of playing around with all those options, I noticed a few times that when I flipped the phase inversion knob that it sounded just a little different. And I was kind of in a hurry trying to try a bunch of different, options on the preamp and get my head around everything. So I kind of just blew it off and thought I was crazy. Started doing some sessions with more people and did more instruments with it. Same thing, a couple of times I flipped the phase and it sounded different. Again, I was in a hurry and just kind of blew it off as I was tired and crazy. MixWave, months later, announces that they're doing a plug-in version of the CA-70, and so I jumped on that because, I'm in coil mode, I'm still in honeymoon mode, I love them. Checked out the plug-in, great plug-in, as you'll see, but, the same thing happened. I started playing around with the phase inversion on the plug-in, same thing, on a few things, I was like, this sounds different. I noticed on a few forums, 1 or 2 other people that were playing with the plugins said the same thing. And everyone's gut reaction was like, something's wrong with the plugin. This shouldn't be doing it. Phase should be clean. I started thinking about it. Again, with the way things react on the Coil preamp hardware, that output stage is extremely reactive to the negative feedback side of the circuit. So if you start turning down the output, the negative feedback controls become a lot more subtle because it's not feeding back as much signal in the input stage if you're turning down the output stage. I also noticed on the hardware that you kind of got some asymmetrical clipping. So one side of the waveform, don't take clipping as a bad thing, but just in essence, one side of the waveform looked a lot different than the other. And I could tell on transients, especially with drums, it's very visible on the waveform. You can see that stuff's kind of lopsided. This is normal for a lot of analog gear. This is nothing weird or new. But I was thinking, hey, if there's like these asymmetrical aspects of the circuit, if you flip the phase, then all of a sudden it's going to be doing that to the inversion of the waveform. This probably makes sense. So I hit up a few guys at MixWave and asked them about it. I also emailed the Coil people. Got an email from everyone saying, hey, yeah, there's something to this. Even the Coil guys that designed the preamps they're extremely knowledgeable people. I mean, they're way more nerdy than I'll ever be and understand this stuff a lot more than I will. But even the creators of the hardware preamp hadn't necessarily designed the preamp to do that specifically, but it's a side effect of just how the analog circuit is designed. And when you start implementing being able to control negative feedback, that was just a byproduct of the design. And the designers of the actual hardware hadn't intentionally done that and hadn't really thought about that as being a factor in the design. And so all that to say, going back to the story, the fact that the plug-in designers that are modeling the analog hardware are doing this at a component level, they were able to recreate this circuit so accurately that a lot of these little kind of weird intricacies that weren't necessarily designed on purpose came through. It's not like the guys that made the hardware sought out to have a phase inversion part of the circuit that made things sound different. It's just that with the way that phase flip is placed in the circuit, it just interacts differently when you start playing with the negative feedback. Anyway, this is all above my head, but I kind of had a basic idea of how it all worked. But anyway, interesting story. So all that to say, the component level modeling that a lot of people are doing at this point is getting scary good. and for it to recreate something that no one really intended to happen in the circuit, pretty cool. But anyway, so here's what I want to do. There's a ton of great reviews out there that go through the plugin in detail and stuff. I wanted to take a little bit of a different perspective with this. So what I've done is I kind of want to do a deep dive into how close is the plugin to the analog circuit. And I know for a lot of people, it's a struggle to be like, hey, why should I buy another plugin of a preamp? Why do we even need preamp emulations inside of a plugin? Because it's one thing to have a preamp in the physical form that's interacting with the mic differently depending on impedance and a lot of other factors. And then to throw a preamp in digitally after you've recorded something, it seems weird. And, it seems like everybody's got 10 versions of a Neve 1073 in their plugin folder. I can understand some people's hesitance to be like, why do I need another preamp plugin? So one interesting discussion that I've had with a few people is, well, can a preamp plugin replace an actual preamp? What if I record everything with a really clean preamp and then apply the plugin version of it? Is that going to get me close to if I had the actual analog preamp? So instead of just sitting around and arguing about it for hours, let's just do it. So I've pulled out my radial splitters that are amazing. I've split out the signal on all of these sources to where one of them is going to my analog CA-70 hardware, and one of them is going to my Universal Audio Apollo preamps with no emulation or anything. It's just a nice, normal, clean preamp. I considered kind of going a little more surgical and doing this with like my AEA TRP or something, but the impedance is so high on that plugin and stuff. It's just, I didn't know how it was going to interact in like a real world scenario. So I figured real world, most people that have this question are just going to have some sort of cheaper run of the mill preamps like the clean ones in the Apollo. So I figured that would be a good comparison. So I just recorded a little bit of a song. Everything's split out to the Apollo and the CA-70. I'm going to show you the options that I had, the presets I had on the analog preamp. I'm going to match those to the plugin. And the important thing to keep in mind is that the way that MixWave has set up the analog plugin, they've gain staged it just a little bit differently. Because for instance, if I put my hardware CA-70 on my mix bus, it's usually sitting probably around -12 on the input, and even that can be a little bit toasty when you've got a full mix going through it. Hitting -12 in line mode on the hardware is about as hard as I'll push it on a full mix. On the plugin, however, you'll notice if you pull up the plugin and just put it on your mix bus, if that input's sitting at 0, everything gain stages in nicely to it, and it sounds great. So all that to say, from talking to the MixWave guys, that was an intentional decision. They wanted to make it a little bit more versatile, because in reality, when you have a hardware preamp, that you want people to use as a line level kind of signal hardware thing as well, you kind of have to split the difference between what's going to work as a preamp stage for mics and what's going to work at a line level stage. So in the plugin instance, you're not really having to worry about mic level, it's all line level. So they've kind of tweaked it to make it a little bit more versatile. So when you're in line mode and you put it at 0, it's not just slamming the crap out of your source. If you want to do that, you can. You just switch the plugin to mic level, and then all of a sudden you've got way more gain than you'd ever need, and you can get into like culture vulture territory in terms of mangling things. So anyway, so what I've done, I've kind of matched settings between the hardware and the software. But the software, once I had the settings visually set the same, MixWave has also implemented a clean input stage and output stage at the beginning and end of the plugin. What I did once I had settings set visually the same is I kind of just used my ears and kind of went into it and usually drove them a little harder until they sounded similar, and then I compensated so that everything's level matched on the output as well. So all that to say, got a full song here. If you're a nerdy Dave Matthews fan, this I did a cover of a Dave Matthews song because I used to be a huge Dave Matthews fan and nerd, and I still am. But this song's called Number 40. They've never done a full studio version of this song, so hopefully I get around any copyright strikes. We'll see. But anyway, I did a version of that song. It's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be acoustic guitar, bass, vocals, and just some random small little percussive things. So I'm gonna shut up. Let's get to it. Let's take a look at some individual instruments and go from there.
Share the time again I spend with you. A friend is always good to have, but a lover's kiss is better than angels raining down on me. I dream of you at times when you're by my side. Dream you're not just like you are, so troubled, doubling my pain with just a grin or tear you shed for me. I wish that I could climb inside your mind and spend some time in there, and I'd hug and hold you and mold you into what I'd like. But no, I can't do this with just a kiss to spend a while by you. Familiar smiling voice. Share the time again I spoke with you. Friend is always good to have, but a lover's kiss is better than angels raining down on me. I dream of you at times when you're by my side. Dream you're not just like you are, so troubled and doubling my pain with just a grin or tear you shed for me. I wish that I could climb inside your mind, and I'd spend some time in there, and I'd hug and hold you and mold you into what I'd like. But no, I can't do this with just a kiss. Spend a while by you, a familiar smiling voice.
All right, one side note on this next instrument. This is called a U-bass from Kala, a company called Kala. They've basically taken a ukulele and turned it into a bass guitar. They have these really loose tension rubber strings on it. I've been interested in these for a while, so I'm going to have a separate review on this instrument at some point because they're really cool. But this is literally the first time I played one. I got it a few days ago and just plugged it in for this song for the first time. I don't know if I'm ever going to plug this instrument into a coil preamp again. The low end was just excessively crazy. It was pretty extreme. Again, lots of low end, but one thing that coil preamps do is they really bring out the low end on certain instruments. So I figured, hey, this is extreme. If I were doing this song for real and I was in engineer mode, I probably would have tweaked stuff and at least changed preamps or something and gotten rid of some low end. But in this instance, this isn't about things sounding good necessarily. This is experimenting and seeing how things sound. So I just went with it and embraced the excessiveness. There's a lot of low end, so kind of pay attention to how the actual hardware preamp handles that versus the plugin. I think it'll be interesting. So in the course of recording all these instruments and going back and forth, out of all the things that made a striking audible difference, it ended up being a damn shaker. And you'll hear it in a second. Listen to the low end and kind of the punchy mid-range when there's hard transients on the shaker. It's really, really noticeable. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, let's take a look at shaker and one more weird thing. So if you were a crazy Dave Matthews nerd like I used to be, and I still kind of am, there's one live version of this song from the mid 90s that everyone considers as the one. It was from an acoustic show for like a radio broadcast. Someone's playing a triangle at a few points in the song, and I really like it. I don't have a triangle, so I dug through and found some crystal, and we're going to kind of make do, but it's just kind of be scattered in the song a few spots. But that's why I'm doing something weird. I'm trying to recreate a triangle as best I can. Suntory. Used to hear that commercial when I lived overseas all the time. Suntory. It's like a whiskey commercial where they throw ice cubes in the cup. Anyway, completely useless fact of the day. You're welcome. So that's all the instrumentation for the song. This one's pretty simple. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you know what's coming. We're at the mix stage. I do this every time. I've done a full mix of the song. I started out doing a full mix with the hardware chain where I ran stuff through the hardware. Got that to a point I was happy. And then on the tracks that I ran through the Universal Audio Apollo, at the top of the plugin chain, the first thing in is the MixWave plugin to kind of imitate it going through the preamp. I matched settings, gain staged in and out of it to where I was happy and thought they were pretty close. Match the chain, so you're going to have a full mix of the hardware chain and a full mix of the clean UA preamps going through the software chain. When I was done with the mix and I was happy with it, the last thing I did was run all the hardware tracks through the actual hardware and line level mode over the mix bus. And then for the software ones, I ran the plugin on the master bus as well. I kind of ran into the same thing I did with the Kala U-Bass. The low end was so excessive. And in my mix, I kind of embraced that and just kept it kind of way bigger than I normally would have because, at least in my mind, I thought the biggest audible differences were probably going to be in the low end and the punchiness. So we'll see if that's true. But the song was already punchy, and then running it through the coils as an after fact made it even punchier. So man, I'm telling you, the low end is insane in this. I normally wouldn't do this. I know it's too much, but again, this isn't necessarily about getting a good sound and being in engineer mode. This is more curious mode and seeing, if we can hear audible difference. So I know the low end is excessive, but that's kind of the point. So we'll see if that comes into play. One more thing, there's a lot of nostalgia about this song to me because I've been listening to one specific live version that Dave Matthews did of this song. I've been listening to it since high school. It's a cool song, but I've listened to it so many times that in my head, I just hear it as that live version. And in the live version, you can kind of hear the openness of the stage and stuff. You can hear people talking and eating in the background. It's different. So again, I kind of embraced that in the mix and just used some reverb and stuff to kind of imitate it being a live recording. So might come off as weird and a little different than some of the stuff I normally do. But anyway, let's take a listen to the full mix. Oh, one more thing. Full session files will be in the link description. I haven't done this yet, but I think what I'm going to have is I'm going to have the hardware, all the hardware tracks. I'm going to have the clean tracks that I ran through the Apollo. And then I'm also going to bounce out the tracks with the actual hardware settings on the plugin so that if you don't have the plugin, you can at least just go back and forth. I'm going to have the clean Universal Audio Apollo tracks in there as well. So if you do have the plugin, you can throw that up and then, play around for yourself and, match things and see what you get. So all that's going to be in the link in the description. I'm going to shut up. Let's listen to some music.
Share the time again I spend with you. A friend is always good to have, but a lover's kiss is better than angels raining down on me. I dream of you at times when you're by my side, dreaming not just like you are, so troubled, doubling my pain just with a grin or tear you shed for me. I wish that I could climb inside your mind and spend some time in there and hug and hold you. mold you into what I like. No, I can't do this. Just a kiss to spend a while by you. Familiar smiling voice while I lay awake. Then you lean back and smiling on you. Most everything you do for me, I say. In the wild, let's make a way. Feel warm in the middle of the storm with you, with loving through. Angel, oh well. While I do my best, and all the rest I leave to you. Can't wait for the hour when the two things become this. Always all this trouble for a kiss from you, I do. Always. Oh yeah, yeah. There you go, so again.
So at this point, I'm shooting this segment right now a few days in the future. I had finished editing the video, putting it together. I was happy with what I had. I sent a copy off to the people at MixWave and Coil to take a look at it and get some feedback. I don't always do that with every company that I do reviews for, but with these guys, I've got a ton of respect for the MixWave and Coil people, and they're just, at the end of the day, they're infinitely more smarter and knowledgeable with, you know, the technical nitty-gritty stuff than I'll ever be. So I need feedback like that from people. So one thing that they took a little bit of an issue with was kind of my overall approach with how I used a splitter to do things with splitting off to the mic and then splitting off to the Apollo. Ultimately, they thought that it would be a more accurate and fairer comparison if I would have just recorded with the Universal Audio Apollo interface preamps, and then after the fact, taken those and applied the plugin to it, and then taken the Apollo preamp feed, and after the fact, fed it back in through the CA-70 hardware and line mode, and then done a comparison, which honestly, I don't know what to think of that. I admit that my approach to this and my title for the video is a little kind of clickbaity. You know, can you actually replace a hardware preamp with a software emulation? So there's a lot of ways that we could have gone about this more accurately, but I thought my approach was unique and I thought it was kind of silly and fun, and so I wanted to give it a try. But to be fair to all the people at Coil and MixWave, I definitely think that their opinion is valid, and if anything, you know, this is just giving us more things to make comparisons with. So I've gone ahead and done that. Since I've already recorded the clean Universal Audio Apollo preamp feed, all I had to do was take a few minutes and take those files, make sure I was level matching when I went back into the hardware after. So I fed all those preamp channels back through the CA-70 hardware in line level, matching the settings and everything. I brought them back in. I pulled up the full mix and applied all of my plugins and stuff to those new files that ran through the CA-70 hardware and line mode, did a full mix, and then just like I did with the other two examples in the past montage, I fed that back through the Coil hardware one more time, just kind of as a mix bus processing. And I'm going to play one more video montage for you in a second. So what this is going to be is we're going to go back and forth in A-B between all of these are going to be files that were recorded with the Universal Audio Apollo preamps. One set is what I'm calling the hardware ones, is I took those Apollo preamps, ran them through the CA-70 in line mode after, and then did a full mix and ran that through the mix bus of the hardware. And then the other one is the software one that you heard before, where it's just the Apollo preamps with the plug-in installed at the top of the plug-in chain, full mix done, and then the plug-in is on the mix bus digitally. So I think, again, the mix bus people and the coil people felt like that would be a more fair comparison. It definitely sounds a little bit different. So we're going to take a look at the Montage one more time and A/B between those. And again, take a look at the session files, because you can go down tons of rabbit holes. If you want to, you can take the original just raw preamp files without any emulation and see what it sounds like when you apply the hardware chain and run that through the actual hardware in line mode. You can compare that with the preamps. It's just, at this point, this is a pretty long video, and we can do tons of different comparisons and go down tons of rabbit holes. So that's why I provide the session files, so that you guys can do anything that you can think of, because I'm sure there's a lot of comparisons that a lot of you will think of that I didn't. So anyway, let's take a look at that montage and hear it going through the hardware after in line mode.
Share the time again I spend with you. A friend is always good to have, but a lover's kiss is better than angels raining down on me. I dream of you at times when you're by my side, dreaming not just like you are, so troubled, doubling my pain just with a grin or tear you shed for me. I wish that I could climb inside your mind and spend some time in there and hug and hold you, mold you into what I'd like. No, I can't do this, just a kiss to spend a while by you. Familiar smiling voice while I lay awake. Then you lean back and smiling on you. Most everything you do for me I say, in the wild let's make a way, feel warm middle of the storm with you, with loving through. Angel, oh well, while I do my best, and all the rest I leave to you. Can't wait for the hour when the two things become this. Always, all this trouble for a kiss from you I do.